Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next installment of SEMA Businesswomen's Network's Allyship series. Today, we are going to be talking about having real life discussions of the value of allyship and the mentality and acting on it. So I'm Rachel Speir, founder of RS Marqueting. Happy to be here with these wonderful panelists that I have, Terry Pritchard and Rebeca Olavarrieta. Terry, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, hey everyone, I'm Terry, and I'm the events and off-road guru for Oracle Lighting. Thanks, Tiffany and Justin, for that killer title. And yes, it does say that on my business card. I am the guru. I'm also the creator and co-host of the Jeep Life podcast. And that's it.
All right, guys, my name is Rebeca Olavarrieta. I am the owner of Roco 4x4. We're an off-road center in Miami, Florida, and we also distribute a few brands across Latin America and to Europe. I've been in the industry for about 18 years, started on the performance side, racing Forma with a Mustang, and then I went off-roading at the Ocala National Forest, and I sold my Mustang, and here we are. Got bitten by the off-road bug. So I'm excited to have this conversation. And thank you, SBN, for putting this together.
Awesome. So first thing I really would like to do is, with everyone on here, I'm going to have Mandy put up some questions so we can understand who our audience is and make sure that we best cater to what you're looking for and want. So if you could go ahead and please answer a few questions for us, that would be amazing. Also to note, just while we're answering questions, if you have any questions specifically for either panelist, myself, about the topic, a comment, please put it in the Q&A and I will make sure that it gets passed on to our panelists to answer. There's also the chat function. So if you have any questions, like I said, please enter it and we will be sure to get to your question or comment. Okay. Lots of women with us today. Awesome. I think there was a few more. Yeah, there you go. There's a few more. So we'll give everybody a couple minutes. So lots of chats. Hello, Elizabeth. Frank, it's good to have you. Frank was actually one of my very first panelists last year when we kicked this off. So Frank, it's nice to see you or have you. Kim, Haley, awesome. I really appreciate everybody being active and engaged with this. The more engaged you are, the more we can all learn and grow together, which is the key here. Good mix. That's awesome. Good mix of. And I really appreciate everybody's patience for answering all these questions. Like I said, it's very important for us to know who's on so we can give you the information that's most valuable for you, since we're talking about value.
And good news, there's only one more question. Total of 5.
Yes. Hi, Steve. Thanks for joining. Another good mix of company sizes. That's great. Last question's really easy.
It's not fair as panelists that don't let us participate on the post.
Right. Awesome. That is great to know. Thank you, everyone, very much for answering all those questions. So now we will officially get started. If we can go to the next slide, that'd be great. So just to recap a little bit from the previous 4 sessions that we've had, what is the ally mentality? It's about recognition, amplification, and empowerment. Recognizing that we're not in the past any longer. We have grown and we have accomplished a lot, but there's still more that we can do together. So it's a lot about introspection and helping others recognize maybe an unconscious bias. Amplification is all about it going, you have your sphere of influence, which maybe then influences somebody else, and then they are able to amplify it by influencing their sphere of influence. So it's about aiming to inspire others to act and think with this ally mentality. And then the empowerment side is just to have invested action to encourage and identify others' abilities, whether it's a different background, different experience. Having that ongoing purposeful effort will create a fundamental shift towards moving towards this ally mentality and equality or equity. Next slide. So again, this is all about education, engagement, and encouragement. Education, without educating and understanding what it is and then telling others, it can't grow. But you also have to engage. It's all about actively listening, asking questions, being curious, reflecting internally, advocating, collaborating, that really makes this ally mindset take hold and have an effect. And then encouragement. Some people aren't very good speaking for themselves, or you just see something that should be encouraged, speak up, do it. Nothing that change that happens overnight or is forced doesn't really last. We've found that many studies have confirmed that. So let's just start small, encourage, grow, amplify together. And that ally mindset will take hold, and we'll all see the value from it, as our panelists are going to talk about right now. So why don't we go to the next slide? Oh, actually, oh no, sorry, that's right. Yes, this slide is perfect. So we wanted to kick this off, being that the ally mindset is a very personal thing. As I said, we have our sphere of influence, but it also, being an ally is a personal choice. We've talked about that in the last few sessions. So I would love to have our panelists kind of talk about the personal value that you guys have seen in your professional career and personally, that this ally mindset has brought you. So Terry, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah. Well, as early, I'm Terry. I grew up in the South around the Nashville area, and um, I was isolated inside this little town, but I got to watch um, myself and my brother be raised by a single mother, and to watch a strong woman lead by example kind of instilled my belief in value for everyone, not just for me or anything. I worked for Apple for almost 18 years, and the tech industry is notorious for male dominance, as is the automotive industry. Um, my career started. I was hired and interviewed and led by an amazing woman who was my manager and mentor for the first 8 years of my career, and it was amazing to watch her include everyone in discussions and to be able to share that her value set with us, and that value set was also with Apple, and the value was placed on what you would bring to the table through an inclusive and diverse settings. And more recently, several years ago, I was doing a multi-part series on my podcast, and we did a Sweet 16 style bracket, putting headlight manufacturers head to head. And while researching this, I found Oracle's leadership structure. I didn't work for Oracle at the time. I found their leadership structure and all the females that were actually a part of that, and I was just blown away. And so I literally took that and showed it directly to my daughter at the time, who was interested in pursuing an automotive career, and to be able to kind of hold that up as role models made an impression on her, that equally made a huge impression on me. Then later, I got to meet Tiffany and her team, and we hit it off right away. Literally spent hours talking about diversity at length and that role model mentality. I knew right then, that they believed and put a high value in the person, not just the outer physical traits of a person, but the whole person. And I think that, for me, solidifies the value of allyship with not just women, but everybody that I work with and everyone that I come in contact with, because I think it's important that we all take that in.
Yep. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, Tiffany, our chair-elect on SBN, is an incredible woman. So it's cool to hear the story of how that all came around. Yeah, she's even in one of the previous sessions last year, one of your Oracle coworkers was even talking about how when he did the Bronco build, he didn't realize that not every company acted with the same sort of ally mindset. So it's good to hear that again from you. So Rebeca, why don't you share with us a little bit about the personal value that the ally mindset has brought to you?
Well, I think it's a wonderful story about how Terry's story went like full circle to like recognizing and then being a part of Oracle today. So personally, the ally mentality has evolved, I guess, throughout my career in the automotive aftermarket. As I mentioned earlier, I started in the performance side of the industry. And keep in mind, this is circa 2006, so Fast and Furious times. So when I used to go to the track, I guess women are supposed to be wearing short shorts and a checkered flag. And I was behind the wheel. So like tons of questions like, is this your brother's car? Is this your dad's car? Like, do you know how to drive stick shift? Can you actually drive this? And all these questions that honestly really pushed me away from what I really enjoy doing, which was racing. And I stopped going to the track. I kept the car because I really enjoyed it. And then when I went off-roading, like I had mentioned, I met with a group from Central Florida, and it was just such an inclusive environment. So it was completely different, just being outdoors and just like, it doesn't matter if you got stuck, if you drove a Toyota or if you drove a Jeep, like, there's some bantering, but nothing major versus like at the track. It's like, you know, if you're Ford versus Chevy, it's like, you know, I'm not going to even talk to you. So that's really where the ally mentality started for me, not only for like in the scenario of men and women, but also like it's the industry as a whole. You know, when we first opened doors, it was you know, the TJ era, right? And then when the JK came out, a lot of shops were like, that's not a real Jeep. And then we're like, well, you know, it's how the industry is evolving, you know, like now it's like a family car that you can take out, you know, to the trails. And just really understanding what the needs and wants are. I mean, if Jeep is doing it, it's because they already know that this is where the market necessities are going. And really listening to when customers would walk in, or whether it was a man or a woman, like, what are you going to use the Jeep for? Like, what's the purpose behind this? And then the same thing when the Bronco came out. So I think that ally mentality has brought tremendous value to myself and personally in my career, and also, you know, to the business, really pushing that onto our staff, that understanding that we really need to focus on what the customer's necessities are, regardless of, you know, what we feel is what they should put on a Jeep if they're going to go like severe off-roading. You know, we do events where we ship these Jeeps across, you know, the world. So we've shipped vehicles to Africa, to Honduras, and that may need certain mods, but then we have customers that walk in and they just want it to look cool. So having that ally mentality, not only for myself, but for really pushing it on the staff, has really made a big impact.
Yeah, we're going to actually launch one poll right now, just to kind of understand what the attendees find as bringing like the most value, what value is most, wow. Where do you see the ally mentality bringing the most value to you? I know for myself, while you guys are answering this, I know for myself, having worked in the racing industry with race car drivers and series and things like that, I know that ally mentality. I've been very nervous at times to approach things or do things. And a lot of the allies that I've had in my career have helped push me and encourage me to to do more, to grow, to learn, without feeling like I needed to be afraid or I was going to be judged by it. It's given me a level of confidence that I never thought that I wouldn't have been able to probably accomplish without having some of those people along the way. So it's been a very important tool for my own personal growth and self-awareness, I guess. But that's just me. But yeah, and it's interesting, the racing side versus the off-road side. I've been doing off-road with my family for a very long time. And yeah, it's everywhere. Sometimes it's just a little bit more prevalent in certain areas than others, as Rebecca was talking about. But
I think it's changed a lot. I mean, I don't want to throw the performance startup industry under the bus. It's just an experience that I had at the specific time that happened. And you know, to that point, you know, if I would have had the opportunity to have, let's say, a male ally, you know, at Roco Motorsports here in South Florida, that would have pushed me and, you know, kind of like, be like, hey, you know, like, we don't need to deal with this. Come on, just keep coming and let's do this. Maybe I wouldn't be even sitting here today. You know, I mean, I'm glad that I am, and it worked out that I'm still part of the industry. But to your point about how mentors can really change the course of your career, I've thought about that a lot.
And you bring up an exact point too, Rebecca, where that's why we're talking about this, because look at the value it's brought you, which has then in turn now brought the industry. So by acting as allies for each other, we can keep influencing each other's sphere of influence and growing that, because that's the goal here, is let's bring value to the industry. So yeah, I think that's awesome. All right, let's see. Self-awareness, collaborations, building trust, better communication. Interesting. I like that. That's a very valuable and very interesting bit of information there. So
We should have had all of the above.
yeah, yeah. But I really appreciate that. So again, if you guys have any questions, comments, anything that you would like to ask Terry or Rebecca, please do so in the Q&A or in the chat, and I will happily pass it along. But we can go on to the next slide now. Okay, so talking about the value for team culture. It seems obvious, but there's so many ways. So Rebecca, why don't you lead us off here and kind of talk about how the ally mentality has brought value to your team culture?
Well, I think culture has become a very, I guess, popular word when it comes to like business conversations, and to a certain degree, I feel like there's so much noise out there about culture that sometimes is a little overrated. And the way I see it is, are the decisions that you're making on a day-to-day basis, or the conversations that you're having on a day-to-day basis, are representative of the values that you want people to describe your company or yourself as a career. So the way I look at it is, when I see certain conversations happening, you know, I really take a look at it and say, okay, this is something that I need to approach my staff and say, hey, I mentioned this because I overheard you, saying this about, the certain build or how we're marketing this product. How do you feel that we should do it? And really dig deep into what's making a staff member feel a certain way about something that we're doing. So I understand that it's difficult for we're a very small business compared to the size of the people that are participating today. And as the company gets bigger, you need to have obviously policies and practices, and everything gets a little bit more complex. But I think at the end of the day, what's worked for me is really have those intimate conversations that really help me understand that my team is standing in the same page as me when it comes to really being an ally to our customers and to other industry members as well. So I'll give an example of something that happened. We started having conversations about opening a franchise of our business in Madrid, in Spain. And as you can probably imagine, even though I'm Hispanic, it's a completely different culture. And I had to have a lot of difficult conversations, like, are the staff members going to be comfortable with having, a woman making the decisions and leading the team? And it was just a lot of conversations that in the beginning were very uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, they were really appreciative that I brought these questions to the table and that I addressed whatever concerns they had about the dynamics, and just made it clear, like, it doesn't matter what gender I am, the goal is here for us to really understand how we can collaborate and reach the objectives that we're setting on the table. But I think just really having uncomfortable conversations is the only way to get that culture heading in the right direction.
I think you bring up a very, very valuable point in it might be uncomfortable, but the goal, what's the goal, and having everybody on the same page. I mean, from experience, I've met your team over in Madrid, and it really seems like you've built such a team of a culture of inclusivity, where your international teams really support each other. So having met them, I think what you've created has built even more allies that can then go out and bring value to the business. So thank you for sharing that, Rebecca. Terry, what about you? What do you see the ally?
Well, I want to go to Madrid.
Amazing.
I think Rebecca hit on a key point, is that feedback piece, and being able to have an environment that allows for that feedback to occur, and to be able to open that line of communication in both directions. I think that's huge. And when you start with the uncomfortable conversations, eventually the conversations become more and more comfortable because we've done them more than once. Every time it gets, I don't want to say a little easier, but we become a little more comfortable with ourselves. And a lot of times it is some self um, reflection that kind of allows for that culture to happen. And and I don't want to say it starts from the top down, but it certainly makes it easier when decision makers are open to that and be creating that environment, because allyship just helps create a culture where everyone can feel comfortable to share their ideas, and knowing that their voice will not be alone. Just having someone that's beside them that thinks the same way really helps that voice to be heard, or even to be said, to have the comfort to open the mouth and say what that is. And a company that recognizes that voice and encourages the support of that voice creates a culture where innovation and creativity are pursued. And everybody's responsible for that. It's not just on the leadership of the company, but I think it's on everybody, from me outward, or anybody on the team. And not just because somebody writes it, on a memo or puts it on a board or something, but because it's done in action and in culture and in daily activities, meetings, even celebrations. That collaboration piece, and that holding each other accountable but supporting at the same time is an amazing attribute for any person working in any company.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've seen also is retention increases both for men and women. And in the industry that we're notorious for turnover. Everybody bounces around a little bit. So I think that it's important to note that if you have the opportunity in the position that you're in the company that you work for, to really push for this allyship, it does make an impact on your retention and keeping your team members comfortable to really stay and not look for options, at least in that sense.
And I will say this is great, because here we have a business owner setting expectations, fostering the culture of allyship. And here we have an ally actually seeking out and joining a culture of allyship with another, it's just, again, it comes back to the recruitment and the retention. You guys are a prime example of that. So I just appreciate that, all your stories and your insight on that. So, retention, as you noted, Rebecca, retention is better and value increases if you don't have that turnover and you're constantly, so I think that's a very, very important and valuable point. We do have a question from Steve. Have you ever struggled to be an ally with someone, and were you able to change that and learn from it? So, Terry, Rebecca, go for it.
I can get it. So I think it boils down to the diversity of perspectives, right? So when somebody has an opinion, it's not something that came up from like that 5-minute conversation that you had with that person. It's a lifetime of experiences that created a perspective for that person to have that, I guess, inability to understand what you're trying to get at with allyship, right? So I'll share a personal example. And I obviously I'm Hispanic, and I have an accent when I'm speaking in English. So when we landed one of our first big orders for international, I was like, I'm gonna place the PO myself. And I picked up the phone and I called the vendor, and the response that I got was, you don't know what product you're selling, and number two, when you learn how to speak English, or when you have somebody in your company that knows how to speak English, have them give me a call. And it took a while for me to regather myself, and then I realized that that conversation was an opportunity to change somebody's perspective. So I picked up the phone again and I was like, hi, it's me again. I realized I was very excited and I was talking very quickly, and it was difficult for, for me to be understood. I want you to know that I know the product that we're selling, and this is the reason why we're putting this together, because it's going overseas. And it's an opportunity for your brand and our company to distribute your product. And are you interested in having this conversation? And, being an immigrant, you have no choice but to understand that you're always going to encounter different perspectives. So I think that just kind of removing yourself from whatever conversation you're having where there's resistance to what you're trying to, and then at the same time understanding, and maybe you're not always going to have the final word in a conversation, and just say like, yeah, I understand. I hope one day you can understand my point of view, and let's just meet halfway in whatever conversation we're having. It's also another way to close it out.
Terry, anything to add?
I don't know that I can top that.
Well, there's no topping it. It's just conversation.
Yeah, no, I think you're very right about the perspective aspect of it, and bringing that in. I have, it depends. I think we all come into whatever situation with biases, and we kind of have our own way of doing things or seeing things. And I had a training once in Apple, and the trainer, to me, seemed very arrogant. She kind of came across as that. And after getting to know her after the first 2 days of a 15-day training, it was one of those things where everyone in the room that she was training were males, and she needed to be the authority, and to be the subject matter expert. And so she had kind of came in with a perspective, and it was jarring almost. But after that, it was one of those things where she and I just talked and got to know each other, and it kind of broke down that barrier, especially for me. And then I became on her side. I don't know if that's the right way to say that, but it opened my perspective for her and allowed me to have that empathy and put myself in her shoes if I was teaching a classroom full of men, and wow, that would be intimidating. And so maybe I would do things to artificially change things, and as we talked, the barrier started. I became a support for her, and her demeanor changed, and the classroom's demeanor changed, and so then it became more unified and productive in a learning environment. But it started out really kind of tense, and I could see where that came from, and it was off-putting in the beginning. And then when you learn someone's perspective, then it allows you to put yourself in their shoes and have that empathy for them, and all of a sudden things got way better.
Yeah, I mean, if we were to have like a conclusion, it's like allyship promotes that mutual respect to change from that confrontational tone to a problem-solving mindset. So it just propels things moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I thank you guys for answering that. I think you totally nailed it. It all comes back to conversation. Maybe it's not resolved, that's okay. You at least addressed it, but maybe, we all have unconscious bias. Every one of us does. And sometimes you just have to take that moment to understand someone's capabilities and value of their knowledge. So that way it'll help you ally with them. I mean, yeah, even though the woman that you were talking about, Terry, even though she was leading this, she maybe didn't realize that she was coming off that way. And you, being an ally, took the time, talked to her, and it made it better it made it more valuable for everyone. So I really appreciate both of your perspectives on that question. I hope, Steve, that answered. So why don't we go to the next slide? So the next topic that we want to talk about is the value for problem solving. So Rebecca, I'm going to have you take this one. Take it away.
Oof. Okay, so Rachel had me think of examples, so I'm full of stories today. So problem solving. Like I mentioned, we do events worldwide, and I think a good example for this one is last November, we did our annual trip in Africa. So we shipped vehicles to Morocco, and we had one of the deeps, the Rio locker seized, right? So we're trying to find a shop, and we're trying to figure out how we can get, the differential to unlock and stuff. And we show up to a shop, and I'm a woman, right, in African country, and I covered my shoulders. I made sure my tone of voice was very low, and I understood that aside from all the other areas that we know, there's a very huge cultural barrier that I needed to like jump that fence for me to be understood and get to that problem solving, right? So I was like, hi, we have this problem. And I said, if you allow me to use certain of your tools, I can show you what I'm talking about. And just kind of really like trying to speak one-on-one and allowing them to not being arrogant and be like, yeah, I know how to solve this, like, hey, I think that if we look in this direction, we can figure out what's happening. And at the end of the conversation, they were like, wow, we've never met a woman that can work on a differential. This is so cool. And, it was really entering with a mindset of like, I know that they have all of these biases that I'm gonna have to figure out a way to overcome so that they can understand and be willing to help me. So even though as women in the industry, we not necessarily enjoy being in an environment that we know that there's a bunch of biases, just really accepting the fact that they're there and entering certain conversations, depending on the circumstances, obviously, on that, with the premise that I need to make sure that I present myself in a way that's professional, that people understand that I'm capable and that I have the knowledge without being arrogant, can really help just shatter those biases.
Nice. Yep. Terry, please add to this.
Well, I come into every interaction with certain amount of biases and beliefs based on my personal experience. Everybody does. And I think it's being able to not necessarily put those aside, because I think that's who we are as humans, and it makes our personalities who they are, but being able to understand how they work and being able to put them in, and for me, problem solving and innovation really is at its best when everyone's perspectives is realized and heard. So, it having other people's ideas and encouraging their perspective to come out really helps for the greater outcome. Coworkers can further this environment as much as leaders can by being active and kind of not saying, hey, I know I have these biases and I'm sticking to them, but to say, hey, I have these biases, but I'm letting go of some of them so that I can bring in the reality that I'm in right now. And, to support that team and to support the individual and to show, diversity really makes the biggest impact when we open it up and see different perspectives other than our own.
Yeah, Terry, you nailed it. And Rebecca, so it's such a great story. I mean, even with cultural, biases, you still found a way to not only ally with that shop and keep the event going, which I was on too. I mean, you don't want to have a vehicle down. You want to have everybody together. And by building those relationships, by overcoming that, having the confidence in yourself and, understanding this is where I'm at, and then building that trust, that respect, you overcame that. And Terry, again, the lines of communication, the free flow of ideas that you had mentioned earlier, I think you nailed it. Problem solving takes a lot of different backgrounds and experiences to come up with an effective solution. So thank you both again. Why don't we go to the next slide? Actually, I have a poll for everybody. Again, so if you could answer, where do you see the ally mentality bringing the most value to your company or professional setting? So whereas before it was more personal, this is more business oriented and where you find the value most applies. And, while everybody's answering that, to kind of circle back to the previous slide, again, the team culture thing, problem solving together as a team builds team culture. So they really go hand in hand, as Terry and Rebecca, gave us brilliant examples of. So I think we're probably close to being done with the poll, but yeah, problem solving, it generates trust, it generates ideation, it generates the culture that you're looking for, that you both are a part of, that Terry and Rebecca are a part of. All right. There we go. Communication, productivity, collaborations. Interesting seeing the productivity and better communication. That's awesome, because that leads us perfectly into the next slide, which is the value of profitability and productivity. So Terry, why don't you lead us off with this one?
If we value each other's input, then we all find our purpose in a common goal. We gain strength from our differences. Every difference is recognized from background or perspective to collaboration and debate. And that just will inspire even greater effort to the clear goal. And ultimately, the goal is getting the most out of our investments that we put in, getting our ROI back, right? And understanding that, because our employees are an investment, and the people that we work with are an investment. And how do we get the most out of them? Make them feel valued and make them feel heard. When we look at the poll, communication was right up there. And I think it's important that open and honest two-way communication is valuable. From the top down, left or right, it doesn't matter. And when we look at this from an ally standpoint, making sure that everyone, I don't want to say is considered equal, but everyone's voice and everyone's opinions and everyone's abilities is brought in as equals, because everything discussed so far, has the potential to be the catalyst for increased productivity, and in the end run, that increases profitability. So I think it's just if we produce an environment internally that allows us to externalize that diversity, that inclusion, it's going to end up resulting in more profit. It's going to end in more productivity. And I know for me, when my voice is heard, I'm more, I put more effort in, just plain and simple. It's call it what it is. If my voice is heard and I'm recognized for what I'm bringing to the table, then my voice is heard. I feel more inspired to put in the effort. And I think everyone can live with that. If profitability and productivity goes up, I think everyone values from that. And so, greeting me, I want to have whoever I'm working for or working with or alongside or an industry to be more profitable and valuable, because it only benefits me in the long run. And I'm going to be selfish. I want to be able to look my daughter in the eyes and say, hey, I did what I was supposed to do so that you'll be proud of me and you can benefit eventually from my actions.
I love that.
Yeah, Steve, I mean, I loved what you said when it said gain strength from our differences. That's going to stick with me for a very long time. You know, knowing that your experience and knowledge is valued. It's hard to put a metric on just how much extra effort maybe somebody would put in, but knowing that that is something there, I think that's a very interesting insight. Rebecca, what do you think?
Well, I think that a lot of the conversation that we've had so far has been focused on like our companies, on our teams, and the brand that we work for, we work with. But I think social media has really extrapolated what this allyship means, because what's happening is that whatever we do as individuals or as brands is being watched by thousands, millions of people. So when we did the Bronco build, we noticed a lot of people talking about women's roles in the industry, like oh, sales and marketing, for example, was like the box that women have been placed in for a long time in the automotive aftermarket. And then even myself, unconsciously, I had put myself in that box. And I'll share another story. When I started this, I was like, yeah, I don't want to be behind the wheel. I did, sales and, stuff like that. And then I saw Teresa Contreras and Jesse Combs racing, and I was like, oh shit. Sorry, I can't. Can women do this? It's like, oh man, like this is exciting. So like the impact that it can have for male supporting women in, let's call it, unconventional roles, can really have an impact industry wide or even outside the industry. Let's be real. Like all the training that you had in Apple, it's making an impact right now in the automotive aftermarket, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's human nature to feel more motivated when you feel valued and heard. And I think exactly, Rebecca. I know for me, yeah, you don't see many, or growing up, you didn't see many women race car drivers. I mean, there was a few out there, but when you see it, it makes it a lot more real. And the shift is happening, as we said. There's a lot being done out there. I think it's again, going back to the previous slides, having that communication, even if it's for what you were saying, Rebecca, having those hard conversations in the beginning makes every other conversation easier as you move on. It generates a culture of trust, free flow of ideas, as per what you were saying, Terry. And if there's a free flow of ideas, who knows what new products or services or opportunities might come up, because one person heard something, saw something, read something, and they bring it to you. Growing your audience. Rebecca, you were talking about how you now have, a whole other shop in Madrid. I mean, that's a huge, like, growing your audience. I mean, that's an incredible value to your company. So there's many metrics and there's many ways that you can determine that the productivity and the profitability is going up. But I think ultimately in the long run, it's the value that you get from the people around you. And I think you both would agree with that. I mean, that's why you joined Oracle, Terry, and Rebecca. That's why you've created the culture at the company at Roco. So why don't we go to the final slide, where it's just kind of a recap of what we talked about, even though I just kind of said anything. So I want to open it up to Rebecca and Terry. If you guys have any final thoughts, or to all the attendees, if you have any final questions, comments, anything, now's the time. But yeah, Rebecca, why don't you give us sort of your final thoughts on the value of the alignment mindset?
Yeah, I think that a lot of times, I just want to point something out. We started with the male ally program, and then we shifted to allyship, and I think it's important to note that just allyship in general, just women supporting women, men supporting men. I mean, it doesn't have to be like a specific gender role type of scenario, but just creating that safe space for dialogue. where leaders can ensure that all of the team members can feel respected, can feel heard, can feel valued, and just in general comfortable to share their ideas and perspectives. Because really, you can create the space to have that conversation, and then somebody, makes a comment, but if everybody else is not really accepting, or they're making fun of that comment, then you're not heading in the right direction. Just as leaders, we need to make sure that that safe space is there for all opinions to be heard.
So Terry, your final thoughts. And
well, first, I'm just honored to be here. I love that this exists, and I love seeing the Bronco project, and be able to, you wouldn't believe the number of pictures I took to give to my daughter, and to know that the role models that are here, that for her as she continues and goes to school for automotive, or now she's switched to airline maintenance, and I don't know, but good for her. She's going to be the only female at her school in that role, and so it's good for her to have role models, and I want to make sure that she feels comfortable with that and knows that she has my complete support, as well as everybody in the industry. I'm available, and I would hope that we have more people become available. And as we do more of this, it does say, hey, it is okay for, the big 300-pound guy to be supportive, and to, put their arm out and say, hey, I've got you. I've got your back. And that provides a lot of comfort, and a lot of just that comfort level, and opening that up and allowing that voice to be heard that might not be heard before.
what else needs to be said? Yeah, you guys, I really appreciate you bringing up too, Rebecca, that, we shifted it to where it's now kind of an everybody needs to be an ally for each other. As Terry mentioned, we all have our unconscious biases, and only together, through uncomfortable conversations, but necessary conversations, can we make this something where it's no longer, as we've talked about today, what gender are you, what this, what that? No, can you do the job? Are you the right person that can bring the value to the team, to the job, to what we have here? So I really just want to say thank you so much to Terry and Rebecca for kind of opening up your personal stories. It's so important. It's a very personal thing to be an ally. So I really appreciate your time. Why don't we go to the final slide, which I think I accidentally, yeah. So the title is different. It's that was this one. The next session is August 20th. But it is going to be we're going to have company owners talk about how the Male Ally program brought value to my company. So Rebecca's already touched upon some of the value that it's brought to her company, but we're going to have three panelists talking about how it's specific, what they've done, and how it's brought value to their companies. So again, I really appreciate everyone's time and all the participation. Thank you all so much for being here today, and I will see everyone hopefully again on August 20th. So have a wonderful afternoon.
Bye. Thank you all for joining.